Bismillah. Assalamu alaikum, hey, and welcome to this week's episode of the iLife Academy Coaching Podcast. This is Abdul Shahid, and you wouldn't believe it, but this is the 25th episode of this podcast. That noise you're hearing, I'm actually sitting under a tree. It's a beautiful day, and it's a little windy, and it's the perfect day to talk to you about validation, recognition, and even addictive behavior. Now, I don't want to put a negative twist on it as soon as I say addictive behavior, but stay with me. This is really more about recognition in life, about status, recognition, like being acknowledged, feeling like you're worthy. We're going to touch on self-esteem, we're going to touch on confidence, and really it's all linked, it's all interlinked, and I'm going to show you the link. But in this episode, what I want to do is I want to show you how you and we go through life constantly looking to be recognized or to be acknowledged, to be assigned a value, right? That sounds like a strange thing to say, like who's going to assign you a value? But without realizing it, we all do it. You see, sometimes we go through our whole lives without knowing what it is that we're actually looking for. And I want to, for example, I want to be recognized for my skills. I want to know what to do to be accepted. I want to be accepted in the crowd. I want to be accepted at work, in my peer group. I want to be accepted. And that acceptance, we strive for it all of our lives. We do many things, like some you might call it peer pressure. Whatever there are different ways that we approach this, that when we're talking about this. But ultimately, we're looking for acceptance, recognition, validation, and all of these are synonymous in the human pursuit for contentment and happiness, right? The desire to find that recognition can drive a person to do many things that you wouldn't otherwise do. You find that these desires and needs become the force and the motivation behind much of what we do. So what is it that we want so much that it drives us to the behaviors that keep us stuck in a rut, keep us doing things that we don't like doing ourselves, and yet we struggle to let go of some of these things? You see, validation, recognition, or the desire to be accepted can be a dangerous game when a person becomes addicted to that validation. They begin to feel like it validates them as a person. This is when it becomes like an addictive behavior or an addiction, because if you don't get the validation, then it affects your self-esteem, it affects your confidence, it makes you feel like an outsider, and ultimately makes you feel like you're different to everyone else, and even affects your abilities to even show up in life. And that could be, that you can call that procrastination, you can call that social anxiety. There are many ways that this manifests. In fact, you find that if a certain amount of healthy validation isn't shown, then we also have a problem. So here's the thing: there are multiple sides to this. Like validation and recognition, acceptance. This is not a bad thing. It can be, depending on how much we seek it. It can be depending on what the situation, what you're doing to get it. But at the same time, if you don't get it, it's also a problem. If you don't get it, it creates problems in our lives, in our relationships. You see, we feel like our relationships are void of intimacy, emotional intimacy, or understanding. You begin to feel misunderstood and unappreciated because of this. You see, this is the beginning of relationship challenges. And when I say relationship challenges, I'm talking about not just the challenges that one has with them, with their significant people in their lives, the husband, the wife, the parents, but also your relationship with yourself. It becomes very personal when you start to believe you don't deserve recognition for who you are or what you do. And it becomes very personal when you don't get any recognition or validation for your personal qualities and attributes. The husband and the wife struggles. Parent and child struggles. The manager and the team members, they struggle. This transcends all relationships, or it affects rather all relationships. It doesn't matter if it's a personal relationship or it's a business relationship, it's a commercial relationship, like it affects all relationships. You see, validation, recognition has positives and negatives. And sometimes it is absolutely essential, whereas other times when a person becomes addicted to it and constantly craves it, it becomes problematic as it drives their behavior. And very often we find that as children we felt rejected. When we're children, when you feel rejected because you're not shown a particular type of acceptance or validation or recognition, then you feel as though you didn't receive the love and affection that you needed to feel validated, to feel recognized, to feel worthy. And that affects a person as they grow up, if they don't recognize it and let it go. And it's not just as children, even as adults, our relationships, when they lack this, we feel rejected. We feel like we're not good enough. When there's too much of it, too much validation, too much, then it has the opposite effect. It actually loses all value. And sometimes you actually begin to not believe it. So, too much of it is no good. Too little of it is no good. And that means that, we all need it. This is a fundamental human need. This is a fundamental human need. It's important to understand the good and the bad of this desire and need. Sometimes, like the fundamental fact that we need it means it's essential for us. But at the same time, when it transcends the need and it becomes a desire, then that tends to fall into the negative. And there are times when you just need it and it's healthy, right? But there are times that it becomes a challenge and you really need to just avoid it. Recognize that you are seeking it out. And yes, we all need it. And seeking it out from the people around you can become, it could become a good thing if it's tending to your needs, but it becomes a destructive thing for you and your relationship if it's the other. And this is usually the case when we struggle to accept ourselves. Like, look, the validation, the greatest validation that anyone needs is to validate themselves. And most of the reason that we're out there seeking validation or recognition or to be accepted by others is that we have not yet accepted ourselves. Like, we struggle to be by ourselves, to be with ourselves. Like, have you ever been in a situation where you're constantly trying to stay busy? You're constantly going from one thing to the next, from work to family to social. Like, you're constantly keeping busy. You can't sit quietly by yourself because you don't know what to do with yourself in that quiet time. And sometimes that quiet time, when there's, the pause between things, in those moments you start to see things in yourself that you don't actually like. You start to see things that are missing, and you don't want to, and you want to stay distracted. And this is the case for many people. Look, it may not be for you, but my guess is if you're listening to this, then you may resonate with this. Because this is something that people have. People struggle with this. And it's the symptoms of low self-esteem. This is a part of it. In fact, the whole validation thing is directly connected to low self-esteem, a lack of confidence. And sometimes just not knowing our own abilities to create a great life with the God-given skills and resources that we find ourselves with. We miss it completely because we're too busy distracting ourselves, trying to gain some sort of acceptance or recognition, like in a destructive behavior that actually works against us. It keeps us so busy that we're unable to see what it is that's actually going on. You see, when you feel like you lack, you almost always become very needy. You see, if you feel like you're lacking something, then you feel like you're in need. And if you feel like you're in need, like, this is when people become very needy. And this is, and look, if you're wanting validation or recognition, you're wanting acceptance amongst the peer group or whoever it is, people simply do not like or appreciate neediness because they're dealing with their own stuff. And although we're thinking that they should give us time, people are struggling with their own things. And the last thing that they want is to feel like the burden of someone else's need, even if they want to help you, even if they want to support you. When it becomes a burden for them, it repels people, and then ultimately you fall into a vicious cycle. Like, you want acceptance, validation or recognition. You want someone to help you to feel worthy or to feel accepted, to feel good enough, and they feel burdened by that need to help you. And it's a subconscious thing. Like, you're doing it subconsciously and they're doing it subconsciously, but it's happening, and it affects the relationship. And it's very off-putting for most people. It repels people, and it actually disconnects people. So if you recognize that you are constantly needing this, it's good to do some inner work, working out what you're actually feeling, and recognizing that the greatest connection, the greatest validation that you're ever going to get, like the one constant validation and connection that you can have, is always being connected to the most merciful, the most loving, the one who accepts you regardless. So the thing is, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will always accept you, has given us guidelines as to how to help ourselves and shape ourselves by shaping our mind with knowledge and understanding, and ultimately that will shape your behaviors. You see, recognition awareness, understanding will open up the pathway. So all that is required is that we try our best with this understanding, with this recognition, with this awareness. You've got to be aware, because you cannot resolve something that you're not aware of. You cannot do anything about something that you don't know. But once you know, then you got to take action on these things. And if you really want to know if you're doing what you could be doing, take a look at your actions. If you want to know what's really going on, look at your actions, look at your behavior, and you will see what's really going on. Because the Prophet ﷺ, he said, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. Like, certainly actions are determined by the intentions. Right? Your actions are in accordance to your intentions, are determined by your intentions. So if you're not taking the action that makes you happy, or if you're not doing the things that create for you what you want in life, and you have all this needy behavior, or this behavior, this desire to be validated, to feel like you're worthy by someone else telling you, or being on your social feed on social media and giving you lots of likes. Like, if you are affected by a lack of social, a lack of likes, a lack of comments on your social feed, if you're affected by that, then that's a signal that you're looking for validation, that you're looking for recognition, that you're looking for someone to pay attention to you. And here's the thing, you don't need it, because all of that is very unreal. Like, it's not as real as it is. Like, it's not a real human connection. It's not the same as getting on the phone and speaking to someone. It's not the same as meeting with someone. Like, sure, like, it is connecting to people, but connecting, like, that validation, like, you can't get that from a social connection. And when we become addicted to validation via social media, then we become addicted to social media. And the whole thing has been designed that way, so that it makes us addicted. It makes us, seek out our validation through it. Now, yes, it is a great tool for connecting. It is a great tool for connecting and for networking, and to be connected to the kind of people you want to be connected to. But it's not a great tool for validation. It's not a great tool for telling you your worthiness, or you're being accepted, whether you're good enough. It is not a great tool for building your confidence. That's not what it is. So if you're using the tool for the wrong thing, you're going to get a short-term fix, but you'll become addicted to it. And this is where the addictive behavior comes from. Addictive behavior comes from the desire for that validation, and so that we then continually behave in a particular way, do a particular thing, because we feel as though it's serving some need within us, is fulfilling some emotional need, or some need that you have. And look, this is the same reason for why people get addicted to drugs or alcohol, or anything else for that matter, because they feel like it is serving a need, but it's misdirected. It's misdirected, and it actually never serves the need. And that's why you get a short-term fix, and then you're back to it again and again and again, looking for that feeling. And so the thing is, what you have to do is you really have to do that inner work. You have to look at your behaviors. You have to look at your actions, and then look at what is it behind that. What are your intentions behind that? What are you trying to achieve by doing this? Because the truth is, like most of these behaviors, they don't give us what we want. And it's funny how we always end up with that inner struggle. Because, whatever it is, validation or recognition or like going out there and, networking and connecting with enough people, like we feel like we're always trying to satisfy an internal need. And that's why I say you got to do the inner work. If you have destructive behaviors, if you have behaviors that you don't like, maybe they're not destructive, maybe they're just distractive, like they're always distracting you, or they're taking you away from important things and making you waste your time with unimportant things. If that's what's going on, then you need to look at your behaviors, and you look at what it is that you're seeking out. What is it that you're seeking out? Because it all comes back down to what you're looking for. What's your goal? What's your intentions? And you can see that by the actions that you're taking. And this is why I say it's funny we end up with the inner struggle, because it always comes back to the inner work. And inner work is, most of the inner work, all of inner work cannot be done without reflection. It cannot be done without thinking. You see, when you do that inner work, the outer challenges or solutions will manifest. It'll become available to you, so that it's that awareness. You will become aware of what the actual challenges and solutions are. See, validation, recognition as a human being needs to be accepted, right? Excuse me. It needs to be accepted. It's the norm. Like, we need it. It's a human need. However, much of the time we're looking to be accepted within a crowd, within a peer group. And you don't need that. You don't need that. You see, validation is a human need. Acceptance is a human need. And it's something that people struggle with their whole lives. And I can speak from my own experience, because at times I've actually felt like a rebel or an outsider who has no acceptance, whilst at other times I felt totally accepted, totally integrated. And it's much to do with what's going on inside as opposed to what's going on outside. And here's a strange finding in my own life. Much of the times where I felt accepted was when I was just following the crowd. That's when I felt accepted, when I was just following the crowd, doing what everyone else was doing. So I've learned through life experience that there is no normal. Normal is not being a part of the crowd and being accepted. Because striving is a part of life. And, we're all in the pursuit of happiness and goals, right? We're all looking for this. But when you do, like when I felt like a rebel, like when I wasn't accepted, is when I did things that everyone else isn't doing. And I'm okay with that. I got used to the idea of that being a norm. And that's all you have to do, is get your head around the fact that you don't have to do what everyone else does. And very often what I found is, if you're doing what everyone else is doing, then quite often that could be because we're looking for validation or acceptance. And no one wants to feel like a stranger. I get it. No one wants to feel like a stranger. But the most important thing is that you have to strive for what it is that you need first before what it is that you desire. And if you and I can just learn to accept ourselves first by validating ourselves, then we have reached the foundational form of validation and recognition. The foundation, because most people struggle with this one. I can tell you. I mean, when I'm working with my clients, when I'm working with, when I'm training my coaches, or like I'm doing therapeutic work, or even high performance work, working with high performers, working on with business clients, I find that the biggest challenge that most people have, despite their successes, is with themselves. That may be low self-trust, it may be low self-belief. They believe in themselves in one area, and in other areas they absolutely struggle. So can you imagine that? Can you imagine people of great success, those who have achieved a lot by societal standards? They've achieved a lot in their lives by societal standards, by the common standards. They suffer with the same self-acceptance or recognition. Sure, they acknowledge their achievements. They acknowledge their own achievements and they thrive in that. But they still struggle with themselves. That's the irony. Success doesn't necessarily breed a high degree of self-belief or self-image. This is inner work. Connecting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Living in congruence with this and with yourself will give you the trust. Likability and even loving oneself. Like, you could be highly successful, and I've seen this many a times. You're highly successful, but struggle with yourself. And validation and recognition is important. But the most important validation and recognition that we need, the most important acceptance that we need, and this is a need, not a desire, it's that need to be accepted regardless of our flaws. The need to be accepted regardless of our flaws, regardless of the mistakes that we make. And the only one that does that 100% of the time is the most merciful, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. And then after that, it's your loved ones, right? But that's not unconditional. But if you want your loved ones, the people that are close to you, to accept you and give you that validation, then here's the thing. Like, most people are out there trying to get what they need. But if the easiest way to get it is for you to give it first. Listen to these words. The easiest way for you to get what you need is to give it to others first. People want it just as much as you and I want it. No one goes out into the world saying to the world that this is what they want, but their actions are shouting it out. No one goes out telling everyone this is what I want, but their actions are shouting it out. Ask yourself, are your actions calling out, shouting out that you need acceptance, you need validation, you need to be told you're worthy? The only one that can give you that is the one that gives it to you unconditionally, like always and forever, regardless of how many mistakes you make. Al-Ghaffar, the one who is perpetually forgiving. But with that, I'm going to end it here. Like, if you want to receive, you'll have to start to get that love and respect, that acceptance, by giving it first. By giving it first. And if you do that, like you deprive yourself of nothing, because you're giving it out to the world, you're giving it to the people that you love, and they will give it back to you. Even if you give it to people you don't know, respect, acceptance, mercy, kindness, tolerance, patience, not being judgmental. If you can give this to others, they will give it to you in return. So I'm going to leave you with that. If you would like to hear more of this, go to QuranicConnection.tv and you'll find lots of podcasts, lots of free content, and of course you'll find some programs where you can actually take a journey on becoming the best possible version of you, living your life up to the maximum, like becoming the optimum you. Emotional needs, high performance, creating businesses that flourish. Like, this is the life. So I'm going to leave you with that. Until the next one. Assalamu alaikum.